That jive-ass turkey better have my motherfucking butter. Every time you see me, I got Adidas on. But I still can check a bitch, so better watch your tone. I'm the original Brody, I'm the Tyrone they clone. Feeling tempted to roll it up and get in my zone. Rhythmic tones, frequencies hitting pyramid domes. Can lift up only through sound, and that's the shit that I'm on. Cryptic and shit in my prose, as I'm dignitizing a pro. A snake charmer, I'm told. But mine is errands, run some errands, ho, go iron some clothes. Think it's a parent who's the parent, and I shine in my role. It's oddy-dotty, lottie-dotty, I'm a party on my own. Top a hottie, and she's acting naughty. She's up in the zone, I'm off some shotties, and I'm talking potty, trying to get it done. If this was 1973, I would've put you on a stroll. In 1993, I would have you on the pole. But we've evolved, I like women with degrees and some goals. Getting Z's at a decent hour when she make it home. No disease, keep that pussy clean, take care of them toes. She getting money, so all this shit she can do it on her own. Hit the gym, take your medicine, do your yoga poses. Here's a way that you can eat to feel full and fit them clothes. Call me late so we can pray and search the scriptures to be whole. I'm a fixture in your life that's hard to replace when I'm gone. So weigh your words before you end up sitting waiting at the phone. Yeah, I'm patient, but the way I am, I'm living by a code. Let her know that dick ain't free, it costs a fee to get infold. Yeah, I need something to hold. What's the story you compose? I'ma flip it. Don't you sell that pussy, let's go open up a business. Think I'm kidding, most are amazed at degrees in which I'm bold. But bitch, gotta be patient, be honest, do what you told. I see the innocence within the darkness in your soul, and with privilege present you with the way that you can mold to our benefit, cause best believe not only for your own. I ain't limited by they doctrines on the ways that things should go. I would rather just be honest with the way that I propose. But when I touch your soul, everything I say is gold. Can't wipe if she ain't solid, if you got somewhere to go. Can't be rocking with a mold. Gotta know what's your role. Does she surrender and follow you even if she doesn't know? Is she swallowing the seed that you were dropping in a dome? Are you watering and anchoring that shit with every O? Classic conditions and thinking of ways to make this shit rose without contradicting the principles and ways that you've shown. Does she appreciate rewards you give for when she's hitting goals? Does she know and can articulate the program in our role? Does she eagerly anticipate the feeling of the pole? Does she turn into a little girl around you like she's home? Adi Dottie got some game for you to take it to the hole. Coach Brody is the name, you gotta pay me.
Congratulations on your album release. I'm so proud of you. It's been a long time coming, and you've put in so much work to get to this point. I wish we were on better terms so I could truly celebrate this moment with you, but I understand that the only reason that's not the case is because of me and my decisions. Before you blocked my number, you communicated to me how my behavior on social media recently made both me and you look bad, and that if I continued that pattern, you'd block my number and move forward with your life without me in it at all. I understand now that that was not a matter of you trying to control me, but a matter of clear communication of boundaries and how you were at your wits' end, trying to hold on to any ounce of hope for me to make things right, or at least not make things worse. But because I felt deep down it was a good time for us to completely move on for good, I took that opportunity to make sure the door stayed closed. It wasn't out of spite or to be disrespectful, it was because I felt it would force me to move on. But it was disrespectful. I wasn't thinking about how it would affect you, or make you look, or even make me look. You continued to extend olive branches, and I kept pushing them away. I'm sorry for this. I realize I'm not entitled to anything from you, not even a response or forgiveness. You already let me know that the door of communication is closed, and you're standing on business, and I respect that. I've been continuing to focus on self-care, self-love, self-awareness, wound healing, and shadow work. I've made progress, but I still have work to do. I rewatched some of your videos, and I re-listened to some of your voice memos as well, and it's crazy how clear the right path is. I can better see now, and I'm sure will continue to see as I heal the way I could and should have handled the situation last year. I see how my childhood wounds, limerence, traumas, and insecurities affected my mental state, perception, and my decisions. You truly loved and trusted in me and in us, and I let you down and betrayed you. I accused you of being a narcissist while turning a blind eye to my own covertly narcissistic behaviors. You warned me time after time how my limerence was out of control and would end up burning bridges. I didn't listen, and I overworked your love. It wasn't even about us having to end up together because you were giving me the option early on of you backing up and me pursuing things with him. But instead of doing that, I kept you in my life and stayed on the fence, making things worse. You were a good, solid man to me, and I used your emotional validation while trying to secure my place in the next man's life. You laid out a plan for the best outcome months in advance before everything blew up, and I chose not to trust or respect you. I understand why you lost your patience with me. I can't act like a victim anymore, and like the safety in the relationship was compromised for no reason. Though I was confused and ignorant of the things I needed to work on and the decisions I needed to make, it was willful ignorance. You would tell me at times that I don't truly love you, and that I don't know what love is, and I always disagreed with that statement, but I can see what you meant now. I should have never did you like that. Due to me not integrating my shadow and not doing the work to heal my childhood wounds, I didn't respond well to your healthy and direct communication, and I only made changes once I saw your patience running thin. But these changes were often bandages to provide a temporary fix instead of me actually doing the mental and emotional work. I know I'm not telling you anything you didn't already know and already told me. You saw through my facade and self-ignorance and saw the wounded version of myself that I was. You saw my shadow, my flaws, and my insecurities, but still accepted me. You also saw the potential for who I could be and tried to push me in that direction. That's love. All in all, I just wanted to take the time to congratulate you and offer you a more sincere apology from the standpoint of having more self-awareness and seeing more where I went wrong. As I said, I'm still on my journey of better understanding and accepting who I truly am. Things didn't have to end the way they did, but that was my choice. I do wish you the best in your life and will always be grateful for your presence and guidance in my life. And though a lot of this growth and realization has been retroactive, you held a mirror up to me and helped me grow as a person.
Now, when I got this email, it was on the morning of February 15th, the morning after I dropped my debut project, Young Negus, A Tale of Sexual Shadow Work, on my YouTube channel and Facebook page. What I dropped was the first third of my overall album, and I dropped it as an EP, and I wasn't ready to drop it on all platforms yet, but I wanted to have it out before my album release party on the 24th of February and wanted to give it some time to be out on my YouTube and Facebook while trying to figure out how to claim my music on my YouTube channel, because I've gotten hit and I've been hit with copyright infringements for my 2 songs that are out on all platforms when I use them for YouTube videos. And those 2 songs are COVID Floor and Jensen Gigolos, right? And also, it's like, in the process of working on this project, I really took a lot from different projects that I was working on. And, Young Negus, A Tale of Sexual Shadow Work is a compilation of songs stemming from experience that led to the creation of my YouTube channel and experiences that influenced many videos that I made along the way, right? So some examples of projects that I pretty much broke down to make Young Negus were, I think there's a project I was working on with Lace the Hands that we didn't really get to finish. A project I was working on with AP when we were in the group. It wasn't a project we were working on, but just some songs we made when we were working together in a band called Movement. There was a project I was working on with Chris Dunbar, right? He was playing guitar and I was doing lo-fi, and this was a project called That's What She Said. There's a project I was working on based in like anime concepts and anime samples with my homeboy Dayton Jackson, and that was something that he didn't really follow through with, so we didn't get to finish it. There was also a project I was working on with this group called Divergent Society and Friends, and this is where I met some people that I know that are on the album now. And there was also a project I was producing for my now ex-girlfriend, the one who sent me this email, called Baby Girl, right? And this was an explicit album from a woman who's a gospel artist, right? And this is all going to play into it. We started working on it, but then she decided, at first we were going to do it and then just drop it anonymously. but she decided that, she didn't want to put herself out there like that. And she cared too much about what other people thought instead of being like authentic to who she was in her music, because all these songs were real. So I broke some of that down and put it in Young Niggas That Tell Sexual Shadow Work as well. So a lot of my content is heavily steeped in and influenced by Jungian psychology concepts like the shadow, the anima, the animus, anima and animus possession, anima and animus projection, and how these relate to my philosophies on sex, dating, BDSM, relationships, and religion, like philosophy in general. So working on this album for me was a natural progression on working on different songs and projects over the years as a rapper, singer, spoken word poet, and producer that mostly went unfinished. There were also some tracks on here that came from freestyles that I put online just because I wanted to stay busy. And, I produced them, then I put them online, and some of these tracks were songs that were either our songs, like songs that we used to listen to together. Like my intro for my project is called Peach, and I sampled some songs that would be like on our playlist together, like How You Feel by James Fauntleroy, and a couple other songs like some Erykah Badu, some Jill Scott. And then there would also be like throughout the years she would send me different songs to sample, because this is just kind of how we would kind of communicate from time to time. She'll just email me something like, you should sample this. So I got one song on there called You Know Me, and on You Know Me, which is going to be on part 2 of Young Niggas That Tell Sexual Shadow Work, I sampled, I think it was the Tiny Desk of BJ the Chicago Kid to make that beat, and that was something that she sent me. So working on this album, like I'll say this, because the truth was that I mostly talk about something I call sexual polarity quadrant, right? Transitional dating, the biology first approach. The truth is that the main relationship in my life was the one I had with my first love and high school sweetheart, and it started when I was 17 years old. So I also talked about something I call premature integration. That's something I've also talked about on my YouTube channel, and trying to navigate those type of scenarios because one thing I learned is that most people I see go on YouTube asking for advice in the comments are people who have pre-existing relationship dynamics, right? So I'm now 28 years old. A lot of the things that I was taught to believe growing up weren't really benefiting me in the dating world, nor our relationship. And I saw so many things growing up that I began to pick up on patterns of female sexual duplicity, and later recognized the importance of sexual polarity in integrating the sexual shadow. But that this was mostly a front-heavy process, and that the relationship I had with the woman I love was prematurely integrated. Like, that's what happened. So before we started dating, I read Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man by Steve Harvey, and this fed into narratives that I was already, blue-pilled with, right? The idea that, the more time we spent together before having sex, the deeper our bond and connection to each other would be, and including my own attachment to her, willingness to stick around and work things out, which was true. But I also came to the false assumption that it would lead to a stronger sexual connection as well. But the raw sexual chemistry and primal aspect of it was either neglected or simply wasn't present on the level I truly wanted it. And this led to fears in me, because as much as I went out of my way to avoid the friend zone dealing with her, that was my first long-term relationship, and our connection started as kids, so it was more like friends or family, and we were connected at the hip pretty much for years. But I saw the lack of the raw primal chemistry outside of rare moments or moments where she felt like she wanted me but couldn't have me, and knew that that was something that we needed, right? Not only for her to get all she needed, although she didn't know it and would oftentimes deny it, but also so that I could protect myself from my biggest fear, which would be being cheated on and betrayed by a woman I truly loved and cared for, simply over her desires for another man and her desires for validation and approval. So I spent years communicating, creating plans, mapping things out, elevating my skills, and giving examples of how things could go so that we could be able to protect our relationship and make things work and have that family that neither one of us had growing up. Like, that's really where I was. But the religious sexual repression was too much for her to overcome with me. So I broke up with her in 2018. And from that point, I moved forward with my sexual shadow work on my own, right? And I became the man that I was afraid of for many other women and for many other relationships. But I learned how to do it in a way to, of course, be honest, because I don't advocate for lying on my YouTube channel, and to not neglect her or disrespect what we had in the process of going through this journey. So after I gained a certain level of skill and knowledge and understanding, I then attempted to bring what I learned back into our dynamic. And much of it, I was able to, on the surface level, some of these things. But the more I learned and healed from my complexes, the more emotionally I began to stop being unavailable. And I also began to realize that I was postponing the inevitable, and that things would only work out under 3 circumstances from my observations, right, in a prematurely integrated relationship. One is that she'd do her shadow work, and that she would join in this journey with me, and that she'd value the safety and sacredness of what we had and embark on this journey with me. 2, that I'd give her the unconditional love and support and freedom to be willing to pretty much be her friend and accept her treating me like she was saving me for later while giving what I truly wanted to someone else. And that's something I felt I couldn't accept. And 3 would be that before we get to that point where her desire for another man would start to mess with things in our relationship, that I would take her to a far enough point sexually, so that if she started dealing with somebody else, it would just be some experiences that she already had. And then after that burnt out, she would be in a position where she sabotaged things enough to come to an end of herself, and that along the way I become emotionally removed enough to start over with the biology first approach, right? Start from the bottom. And that's something that I set in place like years ahead of time, probably starting in 2018. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get these experiences, even though I knew that the relationship wasn't quite right. But over time, we ended up getting closer and closer to each other, and we ended up having a lot of those experiences, but not all of them, right? Not all the ones that I wanted to. But because of how much work I put into explaining things ahead of time and giving the roadmap to navigate this situation, I didn't have the patience for it anymore, and I had to start killing my self-delusions. It killed most of the love that I had for her. For a long time, I took responsibility for things that really weren't my responsibility, and it started becoming draining for me. And for a long time, I respect when she needed her space. Like she say she needed to focus on her spiritual life and her relationship with God, or she would say she needed to quote unquote work on herself and heal, which is typically code word for hoeing off. And typically the way she would do things is that the amount of time it would take for her to typically get comfortable enough with somebody to make that happen, when my spidey sense would tingle that she was about to get to that point, I would typically reintroduce myself into the situation, and then we'd get back to dealing with each other. And that just became a repetitive cycle for things between us over the years, right? But because I would jump back into the picture before she was able to take things all the way, this gave her an out to not truly have to look at herself, right? To see herself for who she was and what she really was. But this was something I saw the entire time. And I spent a lot of time dealing with women and seeing that a lot of the women that I would deal with had similar relationship backgrounds to us. But I would also see how those things turned out. I would even have conversations with clients like this, where women would have this man who they actually are attracted to, who the man actually loves and values the woman. He is there for her, he cares for her, but that psychological reactance, that an animus gets triggered, and because she assigns this animus, this father complex in her mind to a man that she was already in a relationship with, she oftentimes will have what I call the gentleman gigolo complexes, where gents and gigolos come from, to that man, but then feel like because another man is not that invested in her, that she's more open to certain things. And that was something I was afraid of. And the more I dealt with women and saw these different aspects of relationship dynamics, and became a dom, became a serial digmatizer, did all these different things, it exacerbated my fear, because I started to see more and more that the reasons that she would give for as to why she couldn't do this or didn't want to do that were bullshit, right? They weren't real. So I would try to communicate that to her and try to break that down, but she really couldn't hear me, right? So I eventually got to the point where the embarrassment and betrayals were adding up, and I decided that although my goal was to see if I could take what I learned and repair things right? That was my initial goal. I decided that I was going to just communicate honestly and let the chips fall wherever they may, and transmute all of my hopes and aspirations that I have for the relationship into my album, put everything into the album, and to use that to kind of get rid of that sunk cost fallacy, telling the story exactly how it happened, and then to move on with my life. Because something else I saw, and part of the reason I was so adamant about it, was because in conversations that I've had with women in the past, is that they would typically want to go on that little whole phase, go on that little time of exploration. Could have just did it with the man they was already with, right? But they would want to go through that whole phase, go through that time of exploration. They would get that first hit of that dopamine hit of that strange validation, right? That junk food, like typically through social media or through not having boundaries with men who they would hang out with and talk to, or having those male friends that they would sabotage the relationships with, that oftentimes those men, especially if those women were disloyal to do it, those men wouldn't want those women back. I know, because I've been that guy. Or it'll be a situation where there would be this limerence that would take off and create this sexual recency bias, and then the woman would start forgetting those moments of desire she actually felt for the man she was with, and start to pretty much villainize the man in her mind, and then come to a place where really she would have been better off if she stayed with who she was with and gain the mental frameworks and the skills to repair that relationship. Because I don't think most men actually want to be with a woman who has to go, quote unquote, learn herself through another man. Why would you want to be with or marry a woman who's like that? Anytime she goes through a crisis in her life, she got to go be a slut. Like, and I typically am not the biggest one for like shaming language, but I'm a degrader, right? So I like calling women bitches and sluts, and they like when I call them that too, right? That's another thing to understand. They like when I call them that. So it's not just me being mean, but like my philosophy on it is either you my bitch, you my slut, or you're just a bitch and a slut, right? So I put it like that. But that's just from my experiences in life, seeing and observing women's sexual shadows so much that I can just see it on a woman. And I believe every woman has that aspect of her, and that's a good part of her, as long as she knows how to channel it and transmute that into the right direction. But it often takes a certain amount of mental frameworks and understanding in order to get to a place where you can transmute and focus that into the right place, rather than doing it through a false sense of safety, or having it just connected to the toxicity of an individual who doesn't want you back, right? That's where things get toxic, and women oftentimes sabotage good relationships. And I've seen women years later after doing this put themselves in a situation where they're like, the sex wasn't worth it. Sometimes it wasn't even better, right? They're just running off an emotional high, and then they find themselves in a position where sometimes the things they do along the way cause so much damage to the relationships that they may go to a man. They might find a dom who's going to teach them certain things, who's going to make them aware of certain things, who's actually going to be honest with them. And then they go through that process. Typically, that situation doesn't work either. And then they find themselves in a position where they have regrets, and then they want to go back to the man they were previously with. And then so much damage has been done along the way that that man typically is not going to have the willingness to actually be present with her anymore, or to actually want to work on things. And if he does, he might be so hurt by what she did that he may not even want her anymore. And then it's kind of like a woman has to start back over again. And because I've seen that so many times, that's really what I wanted to avoid between us, especially after having spent 10 years together. That's kind of what I wanted to avoid. So a lot of what I studied over the years has been about limerence and the animus, and how they can sabotage relationships, and came up with different methods and strategies of going through this process of growth and individuation without sabotaging a pre-existing relationship, right? And if you want to learn about that, I got videos about that called Polarity is a safe space for integration. You know what I mean? I got other videos talking about how, ethical non-monogamy versus equitable non-monogamy. these different things, right? And I've done it myself. I've done this with other women. I've laid out the roadmap to do it, having done it. But this meant nothing to her when she was at that place in her life, right? That's the truth of the matter. And I tried, but she just couldn't hear it from me. So I got tired of playing the game, right? All that push and pull and desire to stop. I got tired of all the playing the game, and I got tired of all the push and pull shit. And I just desired to stop worrying about her psychological reactance. I decided to stop worrying about it and simply be direct about what I wanted and what my boundaries were, and choosing to be fully open with my love and commitment, and allow myself to get my heart broken and betrayed along the way, betting everything on the situation where, depending on how she'd handle things, would be the make or break of the relationship, where she'd either listen and trust me to make the right decisions, or at least to take any of the multiple choices that I would give her about different pathways of handling the situation based off of what she wanted. And at the bare minimum, to give her a roadmap of how to make things right if she had a lapse in judgment and started fucking things up, right? So one thing that I've learned in life is that apologies without changes in behavior are simply attempts at manipulation, right? I've learned this, right? So now it may have seemed genuine, this email that I got, it may have seemed genuine, but I knew better. Typically, a woman taking an accountability on this level is for one of only a couple of different reasons, or one of only a few different reasons, right? One is to convince herself that she's grown when she hasn't really grown. And it's just out of a desire to soothe her own ego and guilt and try to repair the way she's seen, and to justify how she's behaving by saying that she's growing through what she's doing, right? But understand this. Women who do this for this reason typically have a father complex and are avoidant to the idea of being a certain level of vulnerable, and are simply communicating because she feels that she's sabotaged things enough to feel safe enough to take accountability, with no intentions on doing anything about it or to behave any differently, because in her mind, okay, I fucked things enough to feel like I can't have this person, so now I feel safe to communicate because we're at an emotional distance, right? That's part of it. Because it feels so mature, right? To talk in a way where it seems as if you're taking accountability. But if you're not doing anything about that accountability, it's bullshit. It's just another form of manipulation. Another way of this can be the more covertly narcissistic form, which is simply putting out a feeler to see if you still have access to the person, to see if you still have hooks in them, so that if you do, you can then siphon energy off, right? Seeking to see if things can be moved to calmer waters, and to give the opportunity to reestablish communication from a place of a clean slate, simply because of an apology, because of words, to continue to siphon energy, or to see if you still have somewhere to swing back with your monkey branch, right? That's also bullshit. Because this is where I really went into what I call anti-game, the way to honey badger. Because one thing I recognize is that I got tired of tiptoeing around psychological reactance. I got tired of that shit. I really did. Like, for me, it's like, I know what I can say. I know what I can do in order to treat the situation in a way where she would warm up to me and she would be willing to do this, be willing to do that. But I'm like, no, bitch. You've done enough damage and you've done enough harm to the situation to where if I were to ever communicate with you at all ever again, you have to overcome that shit on your own. I'm not responsible for reassuring your insecure ass. I'm not. Right? And I just had to get to that place within myself where I would be cool with letting the chips fall where they may. So when a woman's thinking in this way, and this is why she's taking accountability, it's not because she respects the principle or she would do something with the principle. It's simply trying to parrot words back to you, right? In order to make it seem as if she's understanding what you're saying on the surface level, without actually putting in that work or actually doing anything about it, right? Because if you listen to one part and I'm right about one thing, then I'm probably right about the others too, if you think about it for real. So part of it is just trying to change the feelings about it to say I understand how you feel, but not actually respecting the principle. When the principles and the feelings were in alignment, and without respecting the principles enough to do something about it, it don't mean shit. Could have kept that to yourself, right? Then the third one would be to genuinely apologize and make amends for the bad behavior, right? And in these instances, sometimes a woman will do that if you simply don't respond, or you give a very short response to this email, like to this apology. If you give like a very short-ended response, or you don't respond at all, then this will trigger some insecurity because she feels like she can't have you, and then she'll come back around and then she'll try to. Or if you give a response that's like very accepting and understanding, and you make it seem as if you're not hurt or not upset or not mad, and you're just over it, it's like, oh, this person's grown. Nah, bitch, I had already grown. You know, I'm past that point in my life where I see the need to pretend to be unbothered by things that is fucked up. I think that's just the place I'm at in my life. I feel like I've done enough real things to where I don't have to pretend to feel or to not feel certain things in order to be happy with myself and to be cool with laying my head in the bed that I made. I ain't got to do that, right? So either, if that's what it was, she would have came straight in with a bid for making amends as well as an apology and congratulations. She would have followed through with, and I'm gonna get to some more stuff later, right? But still breaking this stuff down, dissecting it. So now throughout this email, several videos that I made leading up to the ultimate sabotage and betrayal, as well as afterwards, were quoted, as well as conversations that we had in voice clips that I sent her, right? Which was an attempt to show me that she had been listening and pretty much paraphrasing my words and concepts to show me that she had been listening, right? But that's just telling me, not actually showing. You're not doing anything about it. Because I've already kind of peeped her game. She would like try to back away from little things that I didn't like for a little while, because in her mind, subconsciously, she felt like, okay, if she just left it alone for a little while and then let things settle down, then the negative feelings would start to subside, and then things would be cool again, and then either we could just move on, right? Or we could at least be cordial. I told her what it would take for us to be cordial. Bitch, we ain't cordial, right? So one of those videos was Don't Overwork Love, right? A video describing the basic concept that love is not fully unconditional, and that once love is overworked, which is an individual's capacity to see you and to choose to see you in the best version of you, right? And then to deal with you as if you are the best version of you, to give you the benefit of the doubt, to look beyond the fundamental attribution error, to focus on prioritizing the safety of that relationship. This is what love is, right? It's choosing to see a person in the best light possible. This can be overworked when you fuck people over enough, right? When you do people wrong enough, they can get to the point where even if they do love you, they don't have the energy for that shit anymore. They really don't. Especially if they communicate to you exactly what you're doing, right? So after you do that, after you overwork love, you don't get the same version of that person that you used to have. And if you ever get it, you got to work for it, right? So you don't get the same patience, compassion, trust, and empathy. The same level of care. You don't get that anymore. Nah. Another video that I made is Dark Psychology for Overcoming Limerence, right? Where I detail my own experiences with limerence, because most of my project is about limerence. Most of it isn't about love. Even though there is an underlying love story, I didn't know how it was going to end when I started working on the project and compiling the songs together. I had more songs to write, and I also was still in the middle of the situation as I was working on the project. So most of these songs were really about limerence, right? Limerence, stigmatizing, manipulation, different aspects of the shadow, childhood wounds and traumas, and how the triggering of these childhood wounds and traumas becoming attached to a validational loop to your desire for an individual's approval is ultimately what leads to the concept of like limerence, right? So I talked about my experiences with limerence, her experience with limerence, my experience with women being limerent towards me, the experiences of other women I dealt with being limerent towards other men, and how these cycles were broken, and the positives of it, but also the negatives of it, right? And I gave several strategies of things I've seen and know for a fact work, right? And this was before the ultimate sabotage and betrayal took place. I made this video, and she watched some of it, but she didn't really internalize what she was learning. And if she did, things would have been different. Another is story time, how I sabotaged the monkey brancher. So I'm not getting into the full story of the betrayal and the sabotage in this video, right? I'm not getting into the full story in this video, but you can go back to my video, story time, how I sabotaged the monkey brancher. And she was responding to the things that took place in that video in the email, right? So in that video, I give a detail of things that led to the betrayal and what happened shortly thereafter, where I expressed how I used the situation to my benefit to get studio time, a laptop, collaborations, networking connections, and other things, while connecting with the other guy to work with him, letting him know the situation and that I had no hard feelings towards him, and having conversations about how we'd had very similar experiences with women that we've grown to love over the years. And we were just on the same page. Me and him was just on the same page about the shit. But I also told him, like, I'm not trying to stop you from fucking with the bitch. You know, I understand how you feel about her. I see it. I understand it. If she goofy enough to go down that route, use her for whatever you can get from her. I don't give a fuck. Like, because I talked to her already. So part of that young nigga shit, part of that honey badger anti-game situation is having such a level of full disclosure and honesty with everybody who's involved. So it's not like I'm trying to blindside anybody or get over on anybody. You know, that's the truth of the matter. I wasn't trying to do that. I was like, I'm gonna let everybody know everything, say everything, and let people make their own decisions with the truth. That's what I decided to do. So during this situation, and you know, me and we have a conversation. He was talking about how, man, it sounded just like the situation he had with his girl. And I'm like, yeah, I told her the same thing, right? So another video was, is your ex really a narcissist, right? Is your ex really a narcissist? So in this video, I dissect the covert narcissism and the animus possession of many modern women in relationship dynamics, where they use the buzzword of narcissism and the tactics surrounding narcissism to circumvent accountability of seeing the importance of doing their part in a relationship, and how to break down the difference between a partner who is truly behaving narcissistically versus having behaviors that draw narcissistic traits out of a partner, right? And I'm sure that there were other videos that were also referenced, but it was all too little too late for the words to mean anything to me, right? So I gave her the conditions by which we could be cool on any terms whatsoever on each level, and what I did along the way, you know, including how to handle the situation she was in to avoid blowing up the way they did, and to get the best chance of any possible outcome that she wanted, right? As well as communicating ahead of time exactly how I was going to handle the situation, so nothing was a surprise, right? Like, after she sent me this email, once I concluded that the email was bullshit, you know, the other guy was about to be performing at my album release party. So I went ahead and I sent it to him, asked him, okay, like, okay, in case she show up or whatever going on, I'm not going to confront her about it. So I don't give a fuck about that. Like I said, you do what you do. But if there's anything I need to know, you let me know. And if the answer is yes, then the bitch gonna be dead to me, right? Or I handle the situation accordingly if she come back my way. If she don't, then it is what it is, right? See, what happened is that I moved into the high cup space in masculine dominance, but because of my prematurely integrated relationship, I recognize that I can't control what cup space she's in, right? So me being masculine dominant started to mess things up in our relationship dynamic, because although I had more self-awareness and was more competent, it was just a different vibrational plane than what she was on. And because of this, at first, I just wanted to try to talk to her or run the game, try to get her up to the feminine submissive. But when she wasn't willing to and wasn't able to, and would be doing things that would start sabotaging the relationship in other ways, I got to the point where this shit was making my cup low. And I decided, you know what? She was saying she wanted me to take more responsibility, right? So I decided to do that, right? I took more responsibility and I tried to move into the integrated masculine space, but recognized over time that she wasn't worth it. So I decided to go the way of the honey badger, recognizing that being willing to play the game over the years was more than likely just postponing the inevitable, and that it was becoming very draining to me. So I decided to utilize what I call anti-game, communicating directly what I wanted, what I felt, what I thought, how I saw things going without regard for her psychological reactance, to put a mirror to her face about how her lack of self and situational awareness and how she misjudged me over the years, but putting a stop to holding back from the natural reactions to her behaviors that I would hold back, to be patient and loving and respectful, right? So this kind of works in line with reciprocal analogies, right? Let's say, and once you get to a certain level of understanding with dominant empathy, you understand the underlying sub-communication of a person's words, actions, and behaviors. And you can communicate these things to an individual, but when you communicate them to an individual, this goes in line with my video, Stop Trying to Hold Women Accountable. A woman could be consciously attempting to be manipulative, but oftentimes it's not a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing. And they're not really listening to your words, they're listening to your energy about how you're interacting with them. And if it seems as if you're non-reactive, if it seems as if it's a safe space, if it seems as if you are willing to walk away if she's not picking up what you're putting down, and different things of the like, right? And that's really what a woman's looking for, to respect. It's not necessarily the words coming out of your mouth, but the pattern and the rhythm of your communication, and if you're rewarding bad behavior, right? So I got a video about that called Stop Trying to Hold Women Accountable, things like that. I also got another video about the parable of the house in the storm. That's another video. But I think I got to a point where, and I'm probably going to talk about this in this next paragraph, right? I said, there were times when I allowed myself to break no contact and we get involved again. Or times where she disrespected the boundary I set, to use that as an excuse to take my reaction to it, to avoid the situation and run away without being honest with me or herself. And because I ultimately did want to be with her and wanted things to work out, this would cause me to question my own methods and point of views and compromise or think of different solutions, believing at times that maybe she was maturing and that her losing attraction to the games I felt I had to play meant that we could move into a healthier situation. And that wasn't the case. It's simply that the attraction started going away and the desire for the street started to hit her, but she wasn't willing to be fully honest about what she really wanted. So she would just want to find an excuse to separate herself so that she could go do what she wanted. And then from that place, it was like, listen, I know you, I know our situation. Typically, you're going to be back around, right? This is how things work for years. what you're not going to do is tell me no to go say yes to somebody else and then think you're going to come back to me and that shit's going to be cool. It's not. Now, what you really need to do is, and I don't believe you have to separate yourself to work on your relationship with God or to work on your mental health, right? Because I'm actually somebody who upholds your mental health. But if you feel like that's what you need to do, I'll respect it, but understand what you feed will grow and what you start will die, and that you're going to have to lay in the bed of the decisions that you make, right? That's the truth of the matter. So I decided to stop being afraid of being hurt, right? And I decided to stop holding back, to go all in, to allow myself to get hurt in the process, to start killing the soft spot I have for her, so that I can move into a space of no longer being willing to compromise. And through reaching that place, see the truth of the situation for what it was and see for her for who she was, and to kill my own self-delusions. That through seeing those same tactics from another man work, the ones on the masculine submissive exercise of self-control, the parable of the house in the storm, catch your hand in the cookie jar, how to seduce a woman on social media, these videos I've made. And through seeing this, it let me see that it wasn't a matter of maturing, nor a matter of her having just certain moral boundaries and standards, but just a matter of a lack of attraction, a lack of respect, and a lack of love that was starting to go away. And that to a certain extent, it was never fully there. It was there at times, but that it wasn't fully there. I spent years since I started learning the things that I teach now, picking up different skills and attempting to teach them and implement them and prepare our relationship for when it would reach this point, showing kindness, patience, and understanding. But the animus was too strong and my attachment was too strong for me to simply just walk away, because it was like I had agreement within myself and kind of like an agreement with God, where I was like, until she crosses certain lines, if she chooses to leave, she can leave, and I'll respect that. But if she doesn't cross certain lines, me and her could always come back to each other. So I'm not going to fully abandon this woman, right? That's where I was. But I also wasn't in a high enough cup space to be willing to unconditionally tolerate and accept things that were hurtful to me without expressing myself and my boundaries, right? So although I knew that the way I handled the situation ran contrary to what would have led to the most possibly effective way of repairing the relationship, I decided to put my hopes and aspirations of what I wanted the relationship to be into my first album, and just to continue my own evolution as a man by putting my energy into being as radically honest with everyone about the situation and who I am as possible. First, starting with expressing my love and giving her exactly what she claimed she wanted, right? So that I could feel that my desire to have her do things my way wasn't so I could lead by example, right? So give her what she claimed that she wanted, as well as things she didn't even know she needed. At times expressing that I understood her and what she thought and felt more than she even understood herself. Then allowing her disloyalty and betrayals, and allowing how she handled things over time, right? To build up until little by little, the things she showed she didn't appreciate, I took away, right? Communicated what and for why, and warned her ahead of time and let her decide through her actions how it was going to go. If she valued the safety, she would have done what it took to keep it. If she valued me, she would have done what it took to keep me around. I made sure to communicate things to the point where what was an issue for me was easily observable, so that I could cut off all avenues of excuses on the back end, using the other guy as a metric of what she's willing to do and take, so that I could get to a place where I'd stop taking and making excuses, right? I made sure to, in different ways, involve the guy in the things that she felt drama or about, or felt ashamed of, or all these different things, so that if she decided to re-engage with him just because he may not have been as overt about it, that she knew, just so that she could know. Because I wanted to get to a point for myself where I'd stop taking and making excuses, right? That's the truth of the matter. So one thing I learned years prior was the law of momentum. What you feed will grow and what you starve will die, right? Many people don't have awareness of this and simply move off of their emotions in situations rather than looking at it logically and prioritizing the building of the connection and something sustainable, right? Something long-term, or something that's going to be able to move forward into the future, looking at the different ins and outs, looking at these different aspects of things. Also, knowing that how you show up in a relationship can affect the way that the person you're with shows up, and that through this affecting this, if you deal with them in a way that makes it easier for them to show up in a way for you, where you get to see the side of them that you want to see, then this is the law of momentum. What you feed will grow and what you starve will die. And this is something I've talked to her about for years, but she really wasn't able to pick up what I was putting down with that, right? Because the idea of direct communication would trigger her psychological reactance and it would feel like pressure. And from that point of it feeling like pressure, this is where she would then try to do the opposite of what I was telling her about, right? Or just dismiss it, not take it seriously, not really see the value in the things that I would say. So I would just hammer it in home, right? Knowing that it would make her feel the best, but I didn't give a fuck at that point, right? And, many people, and I'll say this, right? My videos on interoception, on sexual integration, and other videos break down these concepts, right? So this is stuff that's public information. I don't say this to be cynical, but I believe that love is self-delusion, and that this is neither a good nor a bad thing. It depends on the relationship dynamic itself and the person you're with. If the confines of what you need in that relationship, or the standards or the boundaries or the rules that coexist with this relationship, if this is close enough to who this person is and close enough for them to be able to get what they need out of it so that they can maintain staying close enough to this self-delusion you have so that you can continue to choose to see them in the best light possible, right? Being able to choose to see your partner in a way that strengthens your loyalty and desire to maintain the connection, even in moments when they are unable to show up at the best version of themselves in the moment, or just because life happens, that's a powerful thing. But something I oftentimes say in my sexual polarity quadrant videos is that feminine energy corrupts dominance, right? So it's like when you're masculine dominant, having that level of emotional empathy that's connected to being attached, where you start to mix your feminine security with your masculine security before you fully walked out your masculine security, and those are principles that you stand on and expectations that you don't move beyond, or you're in an overflowing cup space to where you no longer have that expectation, it'll corrupt that dominance, right? It'll corrupt it, and then it's not going to be the same. The relationship turns toxic. So, with someone who isn't willing to show up as the best version of themselves and to put in the work to do so, nor to choose the mental frameworks to see you in that light themselves, this can be very draining when it comes to a situation where you're doing the work to show up and do your part in maintaining the connection, but also doing your transmutation to reinterpret stimuli to not view your partner through a fundamental attribution error. So I decided the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, and although I knew that at some point in time that she'd come back around, I also recognized that where she was, she'd want to take whatever stance I had and feel psychologically reacting towards it and try to change my mind. If I decided I didn't want her anymore, she'd try to change my mind. If I decided I did want her, she'd try to change my mind. And the truth was, it's conditional. It is. It's It's conditions for everything. And not going to put me into a corner where I say it's either yes or no. It depends. That's my answer. It depends. Right? So what I decided to do was to set a price, to set the conditions that would push her further down the road of psychological reactance until she'd either move on for good and sabotage things all the way or come to an end of herself. Giving her conditions that I meant every word of and following through because those conditions threatened her sense of freedom. And it wasn't just because they threatened her sense of freedom, right? That wouldn't be completely honest for me to say. It was something that was a possibility that I accepted. Because in everything that I would say to her, it would be strategic honesty, right? There's two forms of strategic honesty. And I talk about the first form in the masculine submissive exercise and self-control and in Catch Your Hand in the Cookie Jar, right? Where one form of strategic honesty is that, backing away if a woman doesn't seem as receptive and pretty much not expecting a woman to have any level of self-awareness, right? And going against her psychological reactance. These type of things are what led to a lot of the different songs in Young Niggas Tailored Sexual Shadow Work, which was understanding this. Right? I got to a point where I didn't care about the delivery anymore. So what I would do is to detail and list out the different possible outcomes. It can go like this, it can go like this, it can go like this, depending on what you want. Now, because I'm not telling you yes or no, and I'm giving you multiple options when I speak to you, I'm going to hold you fully accountable through whether or not you're going to have any level of access to me based off of the choices that you make. And I already have certain things in place of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to handle the situation if you make the choices that I don't like. Right? So she then said she wasn't trying to follow the plan. She just wanted to apologize and congratulate me. So I put the nail in the coffin. And I told her, respectfully, fuck your congratulations and your fake apology. Wasted time and energy on your part. I told you what it was the last time we communicated. Unless you have something tangible to offer, are ready to be open and honest, and can do at least the bare minimum of following simple instructions, never speak or contact me again. Goodbye, Jay. Right? Not saying her name, but it just start with a J. And I accepted that I'll be content with never speaking to nor seeing this woman ever again in life. And set boundaries in place to where she couldn't attempt to breadcrumb, right? Or gaslight, or hoover me, or play the victim. Trying to play this game of... That's why I blocked her on all social medias. Because something that she might try to do is... She's done this in the past, and this is the reason why I did things the way I did. It's because sometimes you go no contact with somebody, and then let's say they start liking your posts on social media, right? Or when we were in no contact sometime during last year, as she was betraying me, when I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, she shared it, right? If I accomplish something, then she wants to share it, or she wants to congratulate me while you're betraying me. Like, fuck your congratulations. Like, bitch, fuck you. I don't care about that. You're not really supporting what I'm doing, but you supporting somebody else. Fuck you, right? So I told her before she made the decision to try and force herself to move on, instead of making the decision that would lead to an amicable ending in case she changed her mind, that I wouldn't be contacting her nor trying to warm her up in any way, right? So if her goal in sending me that message, that email, was to try to create like a clean slate, or to try to warm me up, or to expect me to communicate with her in a way where it's, oh, he's grown and he's healed and all this other shit. I told her ahead of time, I'm like, listen, if I heal 100% on my own, I'm probably not going to want you anymore. Because I was hurt, right? I told her before she followed through with the betrayal, before she did the things that was embarrassing, before she did what she did, I told her ahead of time that I was going to use this story for my album, my YouTube, and a web series that I'm working on, and that I would tell people. So I could have been so what I wanted it to be was a story that had a positive ending. But I also told her it could end up being a cautionary tale. That was up to her. It wasn't about revenge, but simply following through with my word. Right? So that's the closing of a chapter in my life, in my prematurely integrated relationship. I gave the best that I had, and I have no regrets about how I handled things, none whatsoever. And I made sure I handled things to where she wouldn't even feel comfortable coming my way again, unless she really did some serious work on herself, or unless she was really willing to humble herself, right? Like, the only way she'd ever have access to me again would have to be under the context of being willing to overcome that ego and shame on her own, to put her own pride and stubbornness to the side, and to stop being this fake ass good girl and people pleaser who cares too much about what other people think. And if she never does, she already shown me enough to prove she's not worthy of a minute of my time or an ounce of my love. It's Coach Brody. I'm out.